What is up, party people? And today I'm breaking down a review for. Let's get it. First things first, I'd like to preface this video by stating that I made a mistake. Several months ago, on one of our podcasts, I stated that I was not excited for X-Men 97. That it wasn't giving me anything. To continue a show that ended 20 years ago didn't feel like a step in the right direction for a company such as Marvel. Holy shit, I was so wrong. This show is batshit crazy. 10 episodes, they're about 32 minutes each. Batshit crazy from the jump. And I would like to also take a moment to applaud the show makers because they did something that I felt Marvel hadn't been able to do in a very long time for any of their projects. And that is find the perfect balance. You know, when I was watching this show, one of the first things that I thought to myself, guys, was literally, how do you balance the right amount of showing love to the previous show and looking forward in the future and giving us something to take on right now and feel for right now? X-Men did that. This show they struck the perfect balance, in my opinion. Not everybody's gonna agree with me, but in my opinion, they struck the perfect balance. What I was looking for in this show, going into it, I really thought it was going to be a dud. I thought they were going to bring up a lot of the same things from the earlier show and just kind of ride its coattails. But they were aggressive with this show. That's the term that I like to use for this first season of X-Men 97 is aggressive. Whatever they thought in their head, whatever they came up with before they began filming, they went and did. They did it. I mean, there is real deal gravity to season 1, and I'm gonna keep the spoilers to a minimum because we're also going to be coming out with a video probably early next week about the Easter eggs and a lot of the spoilers and a lot of like the end credit scene type stuff, but we are going to go through that. First things first, what I took away from season 1 was the number one thing: Wolverine is not the standout character. He is my favorite X-Men. He is my favorite mutant. He has had the spotlight, especially in live action, for a very long time, and it's all due to Hugh Jackman's success and what he brought to that character. In this show, he has his moments, and there are times where he's needed and he gets that kind of quirkiness about him and that swagger about him. He's not the main character. They managed to make Cyclops cool again. The season starts off with him having a literal meltdown, essentially. Professor X is presumed dead, and they come to find out that Magneto is the sole inheritor of the mansion and to become the leader of the X-Men, basically right off the bat. Also, to the side of that, Cyclops is dealing with a situation where very early in the season, he finds out that his wife, Jean Grey, is quite literally a clone, and he had a kid with her. And the real Jean Grey comes back, and he's having this dilemma in his head, and it's so crazy to see not only Marvel talk about these host topics, but in an animated series. Scott was never cool in the live action movies, in my opinion. I didn't really care about Cyclops at all in live action. This show gave you something to root for, and he was badass in the action sequences. He carried his weight, and obviously the great Jean Grey comes back, and there's this dilemma, and they're struggling to kind of understand each other. They're struggling to come to grips with what exactly happened, and now all of a sudden their son Nathan, which we're gonna get back to him in a second, has this disease of sorts. I won't go into too much detail, and they had to go into the future and give him to somebody that can help him with this disease that is terminal. Well, that kid turns out to be Cable. Episode 3 is quite literally a horror show with Mr. Sinister. The big three of this show in terms of villains is you obviously have Magneto, you have Mr. Sinister, and then you have Bastion. Bastion being the big bad, number one. He is a Sentinel and a human at the same time. So apparently, when I was reading up on it, his dad went into the future and gained Sentinel powers, came back, had sex with his mom, and out popped Bastion. And Bastion's whole thing throughout this show is everyone thinks, oh, well, another mutant hater, right? Especially with the Genova incident and the Sentinels. They're like, oh, he's a Sentinel, he hates mutants. Wrong. He wants humans and mutants dead. It's Bastion's whole thing. And when the X-Men are talking to Cable about it, Cable goes on to explain that he continues to go into the future and tries to fight this battle with Bastion. And the X-Men are like, man, that has to be hell for everyone that lives in that type of future. And Cable's just like, no, they're all chilling because they're all Sentinels and humans. They're all these kind of half-breeds, and they all are just chilling. The mutants are dead, the humans are exterminated, everybody's gone in this future. It is such an intense show because they're not afraid to pull punches. They're not afraid to say, hey, this is our vision, we're sticking to it. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. We have even a hint at a relationship, which I know has been through a lot of turmoil within the nerd community, of Rogue and Magneto. They hint at that. They discuss that. That is comics. They've never wanted to do it in live action. I understand why. The whole age thing, the predator nature, in my opinion, of that relationship, definitely I can understand why that strikes a nerve in some people. This show went for it, balls to the wall. Some things they tried their best to execute. Moving forward, Magneto being the head of X-Men, we see the Genova incident in all of its glory, and we lose one of the main characters of the show up to that point, being Gambit. And Gambit was the character who Rogue was in this kind of weird love triangle with, where he had this type of situationship going on with her, and she loses him, leading to her towards the end of season 1 kind of falling back into the arms of Magneto, which again was a redemption arc for Gambit, and there was a bit of a redemption arc for Magneto. He pretty much towed the line the entire season of anti-hero until he got captured and freed later on in the season, to which he said, this. Magneto decided that once he was freed, he was like, this war, it's a wrap. Humans deserve to die. Basically what he does in a lot of X-Men comics and shows and movies is there's a lot of like social dialogue in these types of shows and movies regarding X-Men because they are treated differently. They are scorned by society. Humans don't like them. The government doesn't necessarily like them all that much. And there are real players within this show that agree with Magneto, that are not on his side, and there's a real kind of polarization of Professor X's teachings and Magneto's teachings, and this kind of like showdown. It's like civil war, and basically Magneto presses the fuck it button and decides to shut off all power to the world, which, would you have it, humanity spirals out of control and they start looting, which is where we get into all of the cameos and things like that. We see Daredevil notice it. We see Cloak and Dagger fighting criminals in the streets, Sentinels. We see Spider-Man notice it, Peter Parker. We see MJ, which, you know anything about the classic Spider-Man show, we know that the show left off with MJ going missing, so I guess that's cleared up. I guess he found her. There is so many cameos. We have Captain America and Iron Man talking to the president, basically like, hey, we have 12 hours or else everybody's dead. We also have people that were in the classic X-Men show that weren't main characters but are now. Jubilee gets a lot of screen time in this season. Morph gets a lot of screen time in this season. Morph is now like a main X-Men character. We see Forge get a lot of screen time. And Morph, he also plays a factor into the cameos because he's able to shapeshift and he's able to turn into people. So we see him literally turn into the Incredible Hulk. Not Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, but I mean like actual angry Incredible Hulk animated series, batshit crazy, killing shit. Like that is what he's able to turn into. He does like the morph smash and everything. It's pretty sick. And this whole thing is just so jam-packed with content that at times I almost felt overwhelmed. And this is where we get into a little bit of the negatives, is there's so much that they want to do and they're moving at such a breakneck speed in this first season that it feels almost as if you can't catch everything. Like I guarantee you I didn't catch everything. I gotta go rewatch it again just to get a grasp on everything, but it's so good. The rewatchability of it is sky high to me. The last 2 episodes struck a nerve. So the table is kind of set at this point. We have Bastion, who by the way pulls off a better Secret Invasion than the Secret Invasion show with Nick Fury and all those guys. They're like, oh well, how are we gonna stop him from creating these half Sentinel, half human people? And it's like Bastion's just kind of sitting there. He's like, yeah, I already did. Beast's love interest in the show just switches and like he presses a few buttons basically and everybody is f***ed. That is literally how it goes. And they're all of a sudden, their eyes are like pink and they're just kill mutants, kill humans, and we're off to the races. Magneto, obviously, he is like, this shit, the power's out, everything is gone, people are looting and rioting in the streets. And then we have Mr. Sinister, which he's helping Bastion with this, which we learn that Dr. Doom was in on the whole Bastion project as well. We learned that Baron Zemo was in on the whole Bastion project as well. And You can tell that Dr. Doom is pro what Bastion is trying to accomplish, but he's also keeping an eye on Bastion because he understands that if he does get exactly what he wants, then it's kind of Bastion's world and we're all just living in it. And then secondly, obviously, I think this was Mogul's way of sitting there and saying, hey guys, just in case, Dr. Doom's here, same Zemo. And I kind of liked the whole different aspect of it because we're used to the whole mutants are superior from Magneto. Okay, what if somebody just said, F them all, I have my whole species set up? And the crazy thing is they can like have sex. That's how they're doing it, is he's reproducing, creating more Sentinel/humanoid people. Same way as like mutants would, same way as humans would, all that kind of stuff. Like, this is not just he's in a lab just making these things. No, it's literally human reproduction on a scale to which he can create a civilization off of it. And then we have to obviously talk about our guy, Wolverine. Episode 9 was heartbreaking. There was a specific scene where they split up into 2 teams and they all have their classic gear on, which shout out to the writers of this show, because there's a scene in which Cyclops gives Cable his new fit to kind of get battle ready, and Cyclops looks at him and says, what am I doing with this, basically? What am I supposed to wear? I'm supposed to wear this? And Cyclops says, what were you expecting, black leather? Which is a reference to the live action X-Men movies, where in the live action X-Men movies they were saying, what, we're supposed to wear tights? So it's kind of like that back and forth. I appreciated that moment. But they split up into 2 groups. Some of the X-Men go to fight Magneto, some of the X-Men are going to fight Bastion. Jean Grey wants all the smoke with Mr. Sinister. Wolverine ends up stabbing Magneto, and I'll never get this image out of my head. Stabs him in the back, blood, and Magneto looks at him and he says, this war is over. And he literally pulls all of the metal, which his entire skeleton, out of Wolverine's body, just absolutely rips it. There's this kind of still shot of like Wolverine just laying there covered in blood with like all the metal kind of wrapping around, coming out of his body. He's not dead, but he's like on life support. And Jean Grey's at his bedside post this whole big fight thing, talking about, I love you, all like, this is deep. This is a family. And we flash forward to the Bastion fight and everything. He does this really cool thing where he rips Cable's arm off and then uses it to like create metal wings and fly away. And then Mr. Sinister's there and Jean Grey and Cyclops and all these guys, they're fighting. And then boom, we get the scene. Where Jean Grey finally says, F it. She turns into the Phoenix, rises from the ashes, and then takes all of his mutant DNA. All of it. All of his mutant DNA is gone. Jean Grey literally just rips it from him. Like, boom, gone. Turns into this super old, decrepit male, goes from like Gen Z to Gen X to like 1940s shit. He is gone. And Mr. Sinister is just wrapped, dude. Magneto, he decides that he's going to go to, I believe it's called Asteroid M in the series, and that is kind of like his whole place that he decides, Earth is a big pile of dog shit, basically. Rogue, now losing Gambit in episode 5. She's like, boom, I'm with you. He gets a couple other mutants to go with him. So the president of the United States is in the war room with Captain America and Iron Man, and also King T'Chaka, not T'Challa, T'Chaka, basically saying, yes, like if you say no to taking this out, the world may never forgive you. So he does that. He starts shooting rockets up at the asteroid and everything like that, to which the entire world looks at him and says, you are quite literally declaring war on the wrong person. This is terrible, blase, blase. All the myths. Professor X is having this like mental warfare with Magneto, and Magneto is like, has a broken psyche, so he doesn't know anything of what's really going on. And he's seeing all these flashbacks. We get a really cool pan shot of like Rogue on a boat with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch behind her, and it's just kind of like the silhouette of them. And then I forget the other kid's name, but his other child is on that boat as well. We get it's a really cool kind of conversation where essentially Professor X is saying, hey, like, I know you've done bad things. We know that you haven't been the best person. We need you. We need you right now to snap out of this. We know that you shut off the entire power grid. We understand it, but we need you, Magneto. And at the very end, he snaps out of it and says, I'm gonna save the world. And he does just that. Him and all the other mutants basically are able to force the asteroid back up, and it's a beautiful shot. It's just a beautiful shot to kind of end that whole battle. And also, I wanted to mention that Bastion, during the whole rocket thing, the X-Men are basically pleading with him the entire time of like, join us, you're not that bad of a guy, join us. And he goes like full Killmonger and he's like, F you guys, I'm out, and decides to fly up into the explosion basically and kill himself, basically saying like, if I can't have the reality that I want, then I'm better off dead anyway. So this is where shit gets really confusing though, guys. So I'm excited for season 2. I'm very excited. It's already been greenlit for season 2 because of the ending of season 1. So after all this happens, they are time travel. Like all the X-Men outside of I think Forge and one other X-Men, they're all teleported to like a different time in history. They meet Apocalypse in like ancient Egypt, like the beginning of Apocalypse. And it sets it up perfectly because also nobody knows where Logan is. So Wolverine's a mystery. The X-Men are in ancient Egypt, and then we flash to the end credits scene. Modern day Apocalypse. He is rummaging through modern day Genova, which in episode 5 we have the Genova genocide is what I like to call it, because that's exactly what it is. Thousands of mutants die. They don't hold anything back in this series as well. They pretty much go full blast. People die. Genova is like no more. Basic rubble. Very similar to like the comics. Well, fast forward to the end credit scene of season 1. Apocalypse is rummaging through all the rubble and he stumbles upon Gambit's card. Now for all my comic lovers out there, we know what this means. The 4 horsemen of Apocalypse, Gambit becomes death. Things are looking very spicy, as Zeus would say, heading into season 2. We don't know where our beloved X-Men will be able to come back into present day. We also don't know where Logan is. He's also like on life support, so God only knows what's going on with him. There was so much, and they paid really good attention to like the extra stuff, like all of the cameos. I'm telling you right now, I'm not a big fan of cameos, but the cameos were strategic. The cameos were not meant to assist the show in any way of like a, oh well, let's just rely upon these guys and bada bing bada boom, it takes a whole Avengers team. No, they basically serve as a purpose to show you what an animated Marvel universe could be, and that's sick to me. This could literally be my new MCU with how good this show was, and I don't say that lightly. This could be where they make their money, genuinely. If they continue with this trend of this show, this could realistically be the new MCU, like an animated universe if they pull this off. So to wrap things up, I'm going to give my final thoughts here, everybody. I give this a 9. I give it a 9 out of 10. I don't think that the whole blip at the end where they're like transported to ancient Egypt really made a lot of sense for me. I felt like there was a tidier way to kind of leave things off, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Now we're setting up for Apocalypse and potentially the 4 horsemen of Apocalypse, which is suggested in him finding Gambit's card. We also set up for things like potential team-ups and crossover events and stuff like that that we could have in the future. And we have a lot of questions going into season 2, which is never a bad thing. It's always good for a show to have several different ways that the plot could take you throughout a season. And for a 10 episode, 30-minute a piece season to give you as much story and give you as much character development and give you as much battles of redemption and pain and stress and love and conquering your issues as it did says a lot. The amount that they jam-packed into this season should tell you all that you need to know. The fact that they made Scott a cool character again. The action sequences were fire. The intros were fire. They kind of elevated the intro a little bit. They changed in what order that the characters are announced in, and they kind of also throughout the season mixed it up. So like after episode 1, when we know Xavier's missing, they replace him with Magneto because now he's the leader of the X-Men, and it's kind of a whole thing. When you watch the intro to each episode, you kind of get a pulse on what they're trying to do and who's going to be featured more and all that kind of stuff. So crazy good stuff, guys. I can't wait for season 2. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Did you like the show? Did you hate the show? Are you ready for season 2? And remember to like and subscribe for more nerdy content just like this. It's your boy Lucky signing off. I'll see you guys again very soon to discuss some of these Easter eggs. Have a good one.